Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you're having a fabulous day already. I love Wednesday because it's the middle of the week. So we're not quite done, but we still have so many possibilities. And also because it's Wellness Wednesday, and also because it's a new release day in my boutique. If you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a Nana. I am now a mother-in-law, which I'm super excited about, although I kind of felt like one anyway for the last couple of years. I am a grad school student studying for my Master of Science, not silence, in clinical mental health counseling. Not a counselor yet, but working on it. And I'm also I'm a exercise junkie, so to speak. I'm a runner. I'm a jazzerciser. I love to line dance, just so many things. And all of these things incorporate to help me feel more well every day. I started the Wellness Wednesday journey, because I learned over time that sharing my story and hearing others share theirs, in the form of peer support groups, educational seminars, a lot of different ways that sharing stories really helps us to find things that work for us when we are battling with anxiety, depression, and other mental health difficulties. And that there are so many things, I've learned over time that there are so many things that we can do for ourselves to help with wellness in general, with our own. So, in any case, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments or ask a question or drop a comment, whatever, to let me know that you saw it. This is episode number 73. And every time that I update the episode number, I just am so grateful that I've had this opportunity to talk with you about these things. And hopefully you will drop a comment and share your experiences too. But that's totally up to you. This was designed to be as interactive as Facebook will allow us to be. Sometimes Facebook doesn't show me all the things. So if you do comment or ask a question, and I don't respond to you, or if you say hi and I don't respond, during my video, then it's because Facebook didn't show it to me. And then I will be more than happy to respond afterwards. Good morning, Danielle. Because sometimes Facebook just doesn't show me all of the things. So I hope you, if you were watching last week, I hope you enjoyed last week's focus on what you can control. If you didn't see that and you would like to, please let me know and I will tag you in it, or I will drop a link to it in the comments when I'm done. Part of focusing on what you can control is mindfulness, which is also something that really helped me on my journey, but not until around 2016, because I really didn't learn what it was. Good morning, Miss Stacy. So I've also mentioned it several times in previous videos, so today seems like a great day to chat about it. So how did I discover mindfulness? I'm sure people talked about it. I couldn't even tell you specific things. I can remember little cliches like, live in the moment, don't worry about anything except, what's in front of you, focus on what you can control. And I can remember being one of those people that frequently rolled my eyes when people said that, because my brain was always spinning and racing and thinking about 80 different things and 80 different scenarios for all those 80 things. And a lot of my time was spent worrying about the future and thinking about the past, ruminating. So that is one of the roots of why I was suffering from anxiety and depression. And I still do. Let me be clear. For me, anxiety and depression are something that I have well under control. And I consider myself to be in recovery, but it takes not as much as it used to, but it is still very easy for me to catch myself slipping back into that. But I know the signs now, and I can often stop it before it gets too far and pull myself back, which I'm extremely grateful for. And one of the reasons is actually mindfulness. Now, if you've heard some of my story before, good morning, Miss Ann. If you've heard some of my story before, then you know that I often describe it as a constant, lifelong internal journey that all of a sudden sometimes seems like everything clicked overnight. And I know deep down in my heart that it did not click overnight. There was a lot of years of digging into myself and questioning things and asking God why he made me the way I was and all of that. A lot of personal growth. But then sometimes I think we do hit periods where everything just starts to click. And that takes us to that next level. And in 2016, that's kind of what happened for me. In 2016, I was finishing up my Bachelor of Psychology. And I had made some major changes in my life, and I was thinking about making some more major changes. One of those major things was making my first trip back to Michigan, where I grew up. Good morning, Miss Kayla. Making my first trip back to Michigan, where I grew up. For the first time in something like, I think the math was something like 26 years. I had left Michigan in 1990 and had not been back since. And this was 2016 now. And I had started planning this trip in October of 2015. And I was also finishing up my last year of my bachelor's study. So there was a lot of change already going on. That was also the time that my daughter was pregnant with my grandson. And there was just a lot of change going on, but it sometimes does seem like it clicked overnight because all of the sudden things that I'd heard over and over and over again, and also things that I'd never heard of before started really clicking and making sense. And one of those was mindfulness. And I'm going to try not to make this story too long because I've got things I want to cover and I don't want to keep you too long. Your time is valuable. So is mine. But this is part of me giving my time and I really enjoy this. So, essentially what happened is one of my last classes in my bachelor's study, asked us to choose an anxiety treatment. Well, actually to choose one of, 8 to 10 treatment options to study, do a paper and a presentation on. And that was when I first heard of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Now, I was already fairly familiar with cognitive therapy. And at the psychology level, we really didn't dig into treatments too hard. We dug more into some of the other types of psychopathology. But mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, whenever I was asked to choose topics to write about, I always did a little research on each topic to see which one really sang to me. And as I was starting to feel like I was getting my anxiety a little bit more under control because of diet and exercise and a lot of prayer, I also was still struggling with it. And I was planning this trip back to Michigan and I knew I was going to be facing a lot of old demons, if you will. And also seeing a lot of people I hadn't seen in a very long time. In a situation where I was a very awkward, often bullied, very socially inept younger person. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of worry, especially since there had been some other recent events that kind of led to this trip. So like I said, just a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of projecting in my head. What if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if I go see this person and they react this way? And that type of thing. And my thoughts were consumed with these things. So I go into this class and I look up the topics and I choose mindfulness-based cognitive therapy because I had started doing yoga. I had started toying a little bit with meditation. So some of the concepts in mindfulness-based cognitive therapy I was like, ooh, this sounds like some of the stuff I've been hearing about. Maybe I need to check this out. And at the time that I did the research, it was being listed as a treatment for anxiety. And listen, most of us don't go to college for psychology unless we're trying to fix something, right? So I was like, this is something that I need to research. So mindfulness-based cognitive therapy became my topic. And in the process, I learned, we can take the cognitive therapy part out of the equation. I'm not going to get into that, but I learned more about mindfulness. Now, with that said, at that time, I don't really like the word empath, but I had figured out that I really struggled with absorbing a lot of other people's emotions, which is why I needed to spend so much time alone. I struggled with separating other people's emotions from my own. There was just a lot going on there. And that was a lot of the reason that I questioned why God made me the way I was. Because at the time I was struggling very much with some of my feelings and why they were so strong and why they were there all the time. So, I started studying this, and that is about the time that it feels like things started to click. And it's like I said, it's not because it happened overnight, but sometimes it seems like that. And sometimes even when people ask me, it's hard to explain it in any other way. So yes, there are certain things that are going to click for you the right time. Like you've heard me say before, the 500,000th time you hear somebody say something, even if you've heard it over and over and over again, there's going to come a moment where it's the right moment for you to hear it. Which is why I'm sometimes very repetitive in these videos, because I understand the importance of that. So that's the basics of my story. And because of mindfulness-based techniques, I made that trip back to Michigan, and it in a completely different way than I would have otherwise. I stopped trying, good morning, Miss Carla. I stopped trying to project 80,000 scenarios about how each interaction was going to go or what was going to happen when I got to my old property or any of those things. I stopped trying to predict what was going to happen so that I could put on my armor and figure out how I was going to respond to it. I stopped beating myself up for the emotions I was feeling, and just kind of let them flow and stop trying to figure them out. And I'm going to stop there because you guys get the idea. I'm starting to get a little teary. Because it really was amazing. So that is why I want to talk to you about mindfulness today, because it's important. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's move on from that story for a minute. So what is mindfulness and why is it important? Well, according to mindful.org, the definition, and well, I like definitions, but I sometimes stray a little bit from them. According to mindful.org, mindfulness is a basic human ability. You heard that. Basic human ability to be fully present and aware of where we are and what we're doing and not be overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's happening around us. That's a big deal. Does anybody struggle with that? Because I struggle a lot. I still do with feeling overwhelmed by everything around me, but it doesn't take the hold. And that's a lot of times the root of anxiety. Yes, sharing those emotional feelings. Yes, it's a constant thing. And there are tools, Danielle, and some of them. We've talked about this, and there's a lot of tools out there if you're open to them that can help you with that. So overwhelm is often something that really gets our anxiety ramped up and really just kind of puts us in a fight, flight, or freeze situation. And for me, a lot of times it was freeze, and a lot of times it was flight too. And I have no problem admitting that. And flight being relative and being, what's the word I'm looking for? Subjective, and not necessarily literally flight, like running away, but running away mentally or running away emotionally too. So, that was the mindful.org definition. Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, which if I refer to it again, I'll refer to it as PCOM, says it's actively and openly paying attention to the present moment. Think, stop, and smell the flowers. Without judgment, or observing instead of engaging. This is important. Observing instead of engaging in thoughts and emotions without judging or evaluating. And that definition is per Dr. Alexa Bonacisti, I think I'm saying that right, who is the assistant professor for PCOM's clinical PsyD program. I won't break down all those definitions and abbreviations. Okay, so mindfulness is important because as humans, we are often not truly focused in the present. Who can tell me that they're truly focused in the present most of the time? Because even though I've done a lot of work on it, I can tell you this week, I have not been focused at all on anything. I've been all over the place. And some of that is outside of my control, and some of it is not. But I can tell you that wherever I am in that moment, I am paying attention to what I'm doing, just like right now. So mindfulness is important because as humans, we are often not truly focused on the present moment. As we move throughout our day, our mind tends to time travel. This means that instead of being in the present, we're worried about the future, or we're ruminating and reliving the past, thinking about previous events, replaying experiences, or thinking about what we should have done differently, which I can't emphasize enough. We kind of talked about this last week on the focus on what you can control. If it's already happened, you can't do anything about it. All you can do is acknowledge whatever may have been a mistake that you need to carry forward so that you don't do it again, right? You cannot control anything that's happened in the past. We tend to beat ourselves up for that, for those things, and it's completely unproductive. Really, all it is us beating ourselves into a lack of self-esteem and self-worth. So the time traveling in our own mind increases judgment, distress, and pulls us away from what really matters. This is a quote from that same Dr. Alexa. We're just going to go with Dr. Alexa. I'm not going to attempt her last name again. Becoming more aware of the present moment allows us to see things more clearly and choose how to respond. And then the National Institute of Health says, we're almost done with Geek Facts, get out of autopilot, that we have to experience life as it unfolds, not as we thought it should have, not as we think it's going to. I know that's, if you're anything like me, and a little bit of a control freak, that's really hard to look at the future or look at an upcoming interaction and not be like, well, if they do this and say this, then I'm going to do this. And if we're always trying to control things that are really out of our control. So why do we need mindfulness? Well, if you haven't already figured out, here's some key things that mindfulness helps us with. More accurate perceptions of what's going on, which leads us to better decisions about how to behave. Better engagement and connection. Greater enjoyment of life and a stronger connection to purpose and meaning. For some people that are working on becoming a little more spiritual, that's going to mean something to you. My personal add-on is that and I did find backup evidence for it, is that it significantly reduced anxiety for me, and reduced anxiety means less cortisol, less stress, healthier body, healthier mind, healthier choices. Health conditions. There is science. They want a lot more. I'm not going to dig into all the whys and wherefores of why something needs more research or whatever. You know, everything. Even studies have so many disclaimers on them anymore. You're like, okay, so what was the point? So what's the real story? And most of them always say at the end, requires more research, inconclusive research. But health conditions, there have been many studies already that say that mindfulness, and this particular one is in direct relationship to mindfulness related meditation, which to me, if you can sit and meditate for even a minute, you're being mindful in that moment. And I'll explain that in a minute. It's been shown to change the structure of your brain features, offer stronger cognition, faster healing for skin conditions, lower blood pressure, improve sleep. And mindfulness has also helped with pain management to reduce physical pain. There's a lot more out there. I'm not going to dig into all that because that's going to possibly start a debate I'm not prepared to have, because I like to be armed with facts and research. So we're just going to leave that there. But that's just a little piece of the pie, and certainly worth looking into more, right? Okay, so let's get into the real meat, which is what are ways to be mindful. And some of these are going to sound familiar. You're going to be like, oh, that's mindfulness, because that's how I was. Breathing, deep breathing, breathing in and counting to 5 while you do it, and then counting to 5 back out as you let it go, or having a mantra or a prayer or whatever it is that works for you, that you're saying as you breathe in and then exhaling and saying it again as you breathe out. And the reason is because in that moment, if you are focusing on counting or that mantra or whatever as you breathe, and you're focusing on breathing in and breathing out, guess what you're not doing? You're not focusing on anything else most of the time. And there's the disclaimer, most of the time. So breathing is really important. It's a way to be mindful. But to mindfully breathe, that means you're paying attention to how the breath feels. You're paying attention as you inhale, and you're paying attention as you exhale. Yes, Carla, breathing. Meditation. Meditation is a component of mindfulness. It is not exclusively, but mindfulness is not exclusively tied to meditation. There are some people out there that have some different schools of thought about meditation. There are some people in different religions, and this is as far as I'm going to go with this, because y'all know I don't like to talk about this too much. There are some religions that frown on yoga. But yoga is a method, or not yoga, meditation. Meditation is a method of mindfulness, because with meditation, you start and you focus on breathing, and then you can do different things with your meditation. You can focus on a mantra. You can just let your thoughts kind of wander. You can visualize something that you want to see happen. There's a lot of different ways to do meditation, but again, it's a component of mindfulness, not exclusively tied to it. So it's not something you have to do in order to be mindful, but meditation is an option, as is yoga. When you're doing yoga, you're focusing on the instructor, and you're focusing on your body and how it feels. And if you're doing it mindfully, then you're paying attention. Oh, that feels a little tight right there. Maybe I shouldn't push as hard. Or this feels good and loose. I feel like I can push a little bit further. Or is that good pain or bad pain? You're focusing on that thing that you're doing right there in the moment and how your body feels. And oftentimes it very much helps to clear the head. So yoga can be considered mindfulness. Tip number 3, put your phone down. This is important. As much as I'm here on my phone right now talking to you, and you are probably listening to me, put your phone down. There are times where you need to put your phone down. If I go for a run, if I have music, I always have my phone with me. If I have music on, which I often do when I'm running on the street, my phone is in my pocket and my headphones are on. So I'm listening to that. If I'm in the woods, I don't wear headphones, but my phone is still with me and it's still in my pocket. But during my run, up to and including my warm-up walk and my cool-down walk, I do not touch the phone. I don't touch the phone. Even if I stop for a few minutes, take a break, breathe, stretch, whatever, I don't touch the phone. Because I want to focus. And even though I may have headphones on in my neighborhood, I'm also looking. I'm looking around and I'm looking at birds and flowers and what this person's done to their house since the last time I ran by. I'm paying attention to what's happening around me. And I'm listening to my thoughts. The music is sometimes a little bit of a distraction, but I'm also paying attention to my thoughts and how my body feels. So put your phone down. Notice things. Smell things. Use all 5 of your senses to pay attention to what's going on around you. Experience whatever's going on. When I run in the woods, I don't run with music. I don't really know why, other than the fact that often when I'm in the woods, that is a time that I tend to, for some reason, truly or feel as though I connect with God more. So I somehow feel like it's sacrilegious to the woods or whatever, or to the space, to wear my headphones. So I do not listen to music when I'm running in the woods. It is the strangest thing, and I seem to do just fine. But there's also a lot more to look at and a lot more to be mindful of, because there's a lot more to see there, especially if it's not somewhere that you are all the time. I also grew up playing in the woods, so I feel like sometimes that's me drifting back to kind of my roots, my happy place, if you will. But put your phone down. Notice things, smell things, savor the tastes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Pay attention to something you might not have noticed before. Phones are okay, but we have to use them, not let them use us, if that makes sense. They can't rule our entire lives. We have to take time to be in the moment, whether it's with a loved one, which is the next thing, quality time with loved ones, no phones, no distractions. And a lot of times, even I'm guilty of taking so many pictures that I'm actually missing what's going on in front of me. So phones are great for pictures, but snap a couple and then put it away, because the memories are there if you make them. I can remember a time that I was feeling extra stressed out. I did a run. I went to my local coffee shop. I took a magazine. I was still getting magazines in the mail. Rarely ever read them. I looked at this magazine. I'm like, there's an article in here I want to read. I'm taking this to the coffee shop. And the entire time, I left my phone in my car. And the entire time I was at the coffee shop, I sat outside at the table and I drank my coffee and I read this magazine. And at that time, I realized that I couldn't remember the last time that I had sat and only done one thing at a time. So electronics, technology, they're wonderful. They really help us out. It's great to have a camera in your pocket 24/7, but sometimes they do take away from that being in the moment and enjoying that quality time with no distractions. They make it possible for us to multitask more, which is not always wonderful. So mindful eating. I have a friend who went on a diet years and years and years ago. She called it a diet at the time. I don't know that it was really a diet. Now that I look back on some of the things she told me she was doing, it was probably just mindful eating. But there was one particular thing that stuck with me. She had a little Dove dark chocolate in the wrapper. You know what I'm talking about, the ones with the little promises on the inside. They're so awesome. I used to eat them all the time. I can't keep like that stuff like that around. And she talked about what she was learning in this class or whatever that she was taking, that part of the reason that we tend to overeat, eat too much, is because we're not being mindful. We're sitting on the couch in front of the TV stuffing our faces, and because we're distracted by the TV or the phone or whatever, we aren't paying attention to how much we're actually taking in. Neither are we really savoring it or tasting it or anything like that. How many times have you or someone you know eaten a meal and you're like, wow, did you even taste that? Because they just shoved it in. I've been guilty. Eric's done it to me a couple times. Hey, did you even taste that? And not paying any attention to it, really enjoying the food. There's different schools of thought. Some people believe that food is nothing more than fuel and not to be enjoyed. I don't necessarily feel the same way. And I'm pretty sure most of you don't either. So mindful eating, she would take this piece of chocolate and she would nibble at it for, I swear, an hour. And I would be like, how are you doing that? Because that whole thing would be in my mouth in one bite. It's a Dove dark chocolate promise. Boop. It's right in there. Just like a Thin Mint. And she's like, because they're teaching me that if I savor it, and I nibble at it a little bit, my craving for the chocolate is dissipated within the first bite or two. I don't need to have 3 or 4 if I savor this one. But that meant she had to savor it. She had to smell it. She had to really taste it. She had to enjoy it. And as a result, this friend was probably eating 1 Dove dark chocolate a day versus this girl over here who was eating anywhere from 2 to 10, depending on what she had in her stash and how stressful the day was. Make sense? So mindful eating, enjoy what you're doing, whatever it is. Eating is just a great example, but eating is a place where if you're being mindful and you're paying attention to flavors and textures and tastes and smells, you're likely to enjoy your food more and eat less of it. Plus, you might learn what you actually like and what you actually don't like, and maybe even why you like it or don't like. So mindful eating is a great place to start because it will change your diet and it will change the way you eat and look at food. Treat yourself like a good friend. Can't repeat it enough. Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to someone that you hold dearest to your heart. Treat yourself like a good friend. That is part of mindfulness. Focusing. When you have, and this was the big one for me. This was the big one for the trip to Michigan. This was the big one all the way around. Intrusive thoughts and feelings. If you are having intrusive thoughts or feelings, here's what you don't have to do. And this is what I learned from mindfulness. This was the first thing I learned. And when I read the paragraph that said that I didn't have to label my emotions or figure them out, I was like, what? I don't have to, what? That's a thing? I don't have to do that? It was literally a completely foreign concept to me because every time I had an emotion or a thought, I was like, why is this here? Why do I feel this way? Why am I thinking this? What's going on? And I had to label it and I had to judge myself for it. And I had to do all these things with it right in that moment. Instead of continuing with whatever I was doing before said thought kind of popped through my head, right? Now, with that said, I've had some moments where foreign thoughts that were in my head were there for a reason. You don't necessarily have to figure out that reason right in that 30-second period. I know it's an amazing concept. I saw somebody give me a surprised face. If you're having an intrusive thought or feeling, you do not have to judge it, label it, or figure it out in that moment. If you are doing something, you are focusing on something, you're trying to be mindful about something, whether you're at work, whether you're focusing on studies, whether you're reading a book, whatever, if you're meditating, just be like, oh, okay, there's that thought. Trying to document with video. Yes, Carla, same. And I actually take a lot less pictures than most people because I'm not used to having a phone in my pocket, a camera in my pocket. I was always a little camera challenged. The phone is the only reason I do take pictures at all. So So you don't have to judge it. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to label it. If it's an emotion and it's an appropriate place and time, you can let yourself feel that emotion, or you can be like, oh, okay, and go back to what you're doing. I know that sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to me too, but it worked. I tried it. It worked. And every time I started to have those racing, spinning thoughts, I would say to myself, okay, what were you just doing, Donna? Go back to what you were doing. And it was amazing how much more I accomplished and how much less I paced and how much less I found myself frozen and helpless in my thoughts, and all of a sudden rabbit trailing to something that had nothing to do with what I was supposed to be working on, trying to figure it out, how I was going to handle it and how it was going to happen and all those things. So you don't have to figure them out. You don't have to judge. You don't have to judge yourself for however you're feeling. You don't have to be like, oh, Donna, why are you feeling that way? There's no reason to feel that way. And then go off on a tangent trying to figure out why you do. You don't have to do that. Thoughts and feelings, they are there. There doesn't have to necessarily be a reason. And even if there is, you don't have to figure it out right then. So, okay, I'm checking time, guys. Visualization. Visualization is another way of being mindful. Visualize what you want something to look like. I have a mentor that took up dancing with his wife. He would visualize he swears he was really bad. I don't really believe he was as bad as he thinks he was, but he swears he was really bad. And that his wife was just fabulous and that he just wanted to be a better dancer for his wife. So while he was meditating, he would visualize the instructor saying, wow, you've really improved. You're doing fantastic. And several classes later, he just kept visualizing this over and over again. Several classes later, that actually happened, almost to the T in the exact words. And I love that story because in the process of visualizing what that would look like, he was also visualizing the steps that would get him there, working harder, practicing more, and he began doing those things. So visualization can be a huge part of mindfulness, especially if you're trying to be mindful about your goals and things you want to accomplish. And then, of course, journaling. Journaling is a huge tool for anxiety, stress reduction, depression, mindfulness, any of those things. Journaling is a fantastic tool that could be taken all the way back to my old friend Sigmund Freud in terms of free association. If you can't just dismiss a thought, write it down. Go back to it later. When I'm studying for school, I have a trigger journal. It was actually a mentor that encouraged me to start keeping the trigger journal. And I don't think this purpose was what she had in mind, but it's working anyway. As I read and as I study and dig into these different counseling theories, I learn things about myself, or I remember things from my past. And I have a lot of aha moments, but I can't just stop studying and run around and replay all this in my head for 2 hours. I don't have time. So I take out my trigger journal and I write it down so that I can revisit it later, what it was, what thoughts I had with it. And with that sometimes comes free association. If you have a time in your life that you love, that you're struggling to remember, get a picture out. Put your phone away. Be mindful. Look at that picture and journal some things. Start writing down the things the first thoughts that come to mind when you are looking at that picture. You might be surprised at what comes back up. That was the whole basis of free association way back in the day, and it's part of mindfulness. It can be part of mindfulness now. So how do we start? I'm going to wrap this up. How do we start? We start small. This is not something that happens overnight. As much as it may seem like it when you talk to someone that it's happened for, it is not something that happens overnight. It is something that takes constant practice. And I can tell you I haven't been practicing a whole lot this week. I can tell you that for sure. You start small. You start with a routine, a consistent time of each day. And you remind yourself, if it's 5 minutes in the morning, before you leave for work or before you leave to volunteer, whatever it is that you do, maybe it's 15 minutes before you go to bed where you start to wind down. Choose one thing. Maybe it's lunchtime if you decide you're going to start eating more mindfully. Choose one thing, do it consistently, and shoot for every day of the week at the same time. That's where you start. You start with one small thing. And then you celebrate your small wins. Good morning, Miss Mimi. if you were successful in hitting your mindfulness goal, whatever that looked like, if it was just 5 minutes of meditation, or if it was mindfully eating your lunch or your breakfast, or if it was 5 minutes of journaling, or 5 minutes with your kids without touching the phone or even looking sideways at it, without them looking at theirs if they have them. If it was any of that kind of thing, celebrate those small wins. Accountability. That's number 3. Talk to somebody. Tell them what you want to do and then be accountable to them. You'd be amazed at how much more likely you are to do something if you told somebody else you would do it. I've really been struggling to get up and go to 5:45 jazzercise class in the morning, which is my preferred class. But if I tell somebody tomorrow that I'm going to be there because they're going to be there too, I guarantee you I will get up the first time that alarm goes off. So think about that. So accountability is huge. That's why I do accountability challenges and things like that in my VIP group, because accountability can sometimes make or break whether you're successful at achieving a goal. If you have somebody else that you tell, that you say, I'm going to do this, and then you don't, you're not just breaking a promise to yourself, you might be breaking a promise to somebody else too. So accountability is huge. And you have to be patient. It is a journey, not a destination. Mindfulness is a journey. It is something to be practiced and improved on every single day. And you know what? If you miss a day or you sit down to meditate and your mind starts to wander, that's okay. Tomorrow's another day. It is okay. The most important thing is that you keep trying. Because the more you try and the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And then, of course, there's books. There's all kinds of books out there on mindfulness. But the one for me in particular is this one. I'm going to drop a link for you in the comments. This is the Toolbox workbook that came along with or was recommended by or with my textbook at that time. And it's got 50, on the cover it says 50 practical tips, tools and handouts for anxiety, depression, stress, and pain. I'm going to drop a link for you in the comments so you can check it out. There's so much great in this book. A little bit of this book is geared at a practitioner. A lot of it is geared at anybody that's reading. And there's a lot of great worksheets and stuff in there that you can play with. And it's not very expensive. So this was where it started for me, right here. As soon as I learned about this workbook, I ordered it, and Carla's like, woo, a book. And this has been a reference for me many times, especially recently with the classes I'm taking. So it needs to be a reference more. Admittedly, I probably don't use it as much as I should, but it's off the bookshelf in front and center now and has been for about a week. So books, there's all kinds of books out there. Check them out. Read the descriptions. Find one that resonates with you. But if you're interested in this one, which was the start of mindfulness for me, I'm going to drop a link in the comments as soon as I'm done. And that is all I have for you today. I hope you found this helpful. If you found it helpful, please share. Again, if you did not see last week's Focusing on What You Can Control, let me know. I'll drop that link in the comments or tag you in that video. And if you want to see, if you're just stumbling on my page and you want to see videos you haven't seen, you can just go right to my page to the video section and click on them. And they're all there. They're all there. You can watch them at your leisure. But if you found it helpful, please share because somebody else might find it helpful too. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a fabulous Wednesday. I don't know what I'm talking about next week yet, but it's stewing. And I'll definitely let you know. And the most importantly, have a fabulous, well Wednesday and try to find a few minutes to be mindful today. Love you all. Bye.